Omnitrix is destroying Ben 10. If you dig into the lore of this series and actually look at the science of what's going on with this handy little device, you'll realize that Ben 10 might be digging himself a deeper grave every single time he's using it. And that could result in a fate even worse than death. Hello Internet, welcome to Film Theory, the show that's no ordinary kid because an alien device stuck to my wrist and did what it did. And it wants to challenge you to transform that subscribe button in 5 seconds. You ready? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1! Did you manage to transform in time? So if you didn't pick it up, today we are finally cracking open the absolute classic that is the Ben 10 franchise. This Cartoon Network series is all about a 10-year-old named Ben Tennyson, whose life changes forever when he finds an extraterrestrial weapon called the Omnitrix while out on a walk in the woods. With this device, he can transform into any alien on a genetic level, each species with their own unique abilities. Speed, flight, strength, durability, shooting fire from fingertips, rewriting entire galaxies from scratch. You know, the basics for crime fighting. Basically, if there's any superpower you can imagine, there's an alien for it. So Ben teams up with his cousin Gwen, who has magical talents, and their grandpa Max, who already knows a suspicious amount about alien life and technology, to do heroics across the world. And from there, the entire franchise follows Ben's journey as he matures and masters his newfound powers to defend Earth from threats both domestic and extraterrestrial. As a proud 90s kid, I came to the Ben 10 franchise a little late and didn't realize just how powerful a series it was. Seriously, I was shocked by the sheer amount of content that's been produced by this concept. 5 whole TV shows, 5 movies, a bunch of TV specials, crossovers, video games. I actually didn't know this, but Ben 10 is one of the highest earning media franchises in history, with billions in revenue. It's standing shoulder to shoulder with titans like Pirates of the Caribbean and the Muppets, and it's ahead of the likes of Superman, Shrek, and Sonic the Hedgehog. Ben 10 is flourishing, and it's one of those rare franchises that grew up with its audience. Seriously, some of the jokes made in later series are just like so out of pocket.
Look, Gwen, you have to treat a car like you treat a woman.
Go on.
No. I sense I've made a mistake of some kind.
While other parts leaned into some gnarly looking sequences that were basically body horror. Absolutely brutal, and I am here for it. But best of all, with so many episodes across so many series, you know that there's a ton of lore to dive into here and theorize about. And right off the bat, there's one thing in this series that really caught my attention. The device that this whole franchise was built on, the Omnitrix. Yeah, when you really sit down to think about what this device is and what it actually does, it's horrifying. Get this, theoretically, the Omnitrix would basically be killing Ben with every transformation. Yeah, every single one. By trying to play hero and live vicariously through all of these alien transformations, Ben would be digging himself a deeper hole every time he tries to save the world. Don't believe me? Well, get ready to fight some crime, loyal theorists, because it's theory time. So the best way to start diving deep into the ill effects of the Omnitrix would be to discuss what exactly the Omnitrix is and what it does. Because let me tell you, in my time exploring the iceberg of lore that came packaged with Ben 10, the Omnitrix is the gift that keeps on giving. This tiny little device on Ben's wrist is much more than meets the eye. For example, did you know that according to series creator Duncan Rouleau, this thing operates faster than the speed of light? Yeah, this little thing is so powerful that it breaks the laws of physics. But that's just the beginning. In the original series, we're given incredibly little information about how exactly the Omnitrix works. I mean, even the theme song points this out. Alright then, Omnitrix, keep your secrets. But despite this, we can learn a lot given what we see in the show. For example, there's both a timeout feature and a cooldown period between transformations, so its power is heavily restricted, at least to start out with, and no matter what Ben tries, it won't come off. Though Ben starts out with a roster of just 10 aliens he can transform into, Ben 10, I see what you did there. There are over 1 million inside.
Who knows how many more alien hero dudes are inside this thing?
It's also not the most durable or accurate device, considering that Ben tried to jailbreak it with a screwdriver, yeah, just like a normal screwdriver, and it's glitchy and known to have a mind of its own. Yeah, usually when Ben finds himself between a shock rock and a hard place, you can bet it's the Omnitrix doing something weird. But when it comes to figuring out how exactly this thing works, the series' big bad evil guy and Ben's arch nemesis Vilgax is the first to provide us any useful details. How? Well, because when he first meets Ben, Vilgax is disappointed and surprised that Ben already has the device, for a very specific reason.
appears the Omnitrix is already merged with your own DNA.
Wait, hello? What? Yeah, in case you missed that, the Omnitrix merged with Ben's DNA, and that's a huge deal. Later in that same episode, we see a scan of Ben, and the Omnitrix has completely affected Ben's entire body. From the double helix of his DNA to his tippy toes, not just the wrist that the Omnitrix latched onto. It's literally become a part of him, in a way that seems pretty sus, like some sort of parasitic organism stuck to Ben. And I mean, come on, the visual similarities to classic alien symbiotic parasites can't really be ignored, right? The Omnitrix moves on its own. It liquefies into an amorphous goo that jumps on him, latches onto his arm, and won't let go. It also literally changes Ben's biology enough to do impossible things to protect itself and its host. Like there's an episode of Ben 10 Alien Force called Single-Handed, where the villain of the week actually chops off Ben's hand. But don't you worry, both Ben and his hand are totally fine. In fact, he can still feel it and move it, and so he does, blindly fighting back. That takes the form of just kind of, like punching the air a bit, but hey, at least he's trying. And what's more, that same episode shows that the Omnitrix has a will to survive even without Ben controlling it. It fully takes over his hand's motor functions to make decisions of its own, going into stealth mode, spotting potential danger, running for its life, climbing a tree to escape danger, and even tracking down help. On top of that, for the first couple of seasons, we're straight up led to believe that it can't be removed at all. Ever. And when it does come off, it's literally peeled off of Ben's wrist in one of the most horrific ways imaginable. And here I have to remind us all that this is a kid's show. Like, dang. Overall, this is just a weird device that does strange things. But here's the thing. At this point, when it's like taken off of Ben's wrist, Ben could walk away. It's off. He's free. But he doesn't. Instead, after the battle and the episode is over, Ben jumps at the opportunity to slap it right back on where he feels it belongs. Was this just an excuse to have some drama in an episode and extend a franchise that's been very successful for Cartoon Network? I mean, yes. But on top of that, we're just a couple seasons into this show, and the Omnitrix is already more than just a cool toy or a tool. It's a part of Ben's identity, enough so that he can't wait to continue his dangerous antics with it. And that's just the beginning. The further the franchise goes, the more the Omnitrix becomes part of Ben's self-image. For example, he starts to view his alien transformations as just extensions of himself. He's devastated when any of them are destroyed. And he names them all like they're pets or children.
Hey, what do you call this guy?
I don't know. Absolute Zero.
Boring. How about Arctic Guana?
Cool.
Gotta say though, Ben, Ghost Freak sounds less like a cool nickname and more like a creative extraterrestrial slur. You might want to workshop that one. Bottom line, the Omnitrix is more than just a toy. It's part of Ben's identity and he grows to love it. Now, this is framed as a good thing in the show. It's a positive part of Ben's journey to become a hero. But when you take a step back and look at it from a bird's eye view, it seems to have literally changed or rewritten parts of Ben's personality to be dependent on the Omnitrix, which, by the way, also lines up with the actual mechanics of how the Omnitrix works, and it's unsettling to say the least. So, what's really happening to Ben when it's hero time? How does this actually work? Well, believe it or not, but the best insight we get into the logistics of the Omnitrix here comes from the scripts of the show. In the script for an episode of Ultimate Alien, we're told that the Omnitrix functions by releasing an Omnitrix pill into Ben's bloodstream. The pill then initiates a mutation process which literally merges the selected alien DNA with Ben's human DNA. This more or less lines up with all of the campy, overly expositional transition sequences we see in the actual show. But hey, get this, because of this, we can figure out pretty much how and why the Omnitrix has a timeout feature. Yeah, early on in the series, the timeout feature with the Omnitrix is an important part of Ben's transformations, both creating drama during the franchise's fights and protecting Ben. Yeah, in more than one instance, Ben has to fight off possession from his alien forms, whether it be through their body's natural instincts or the sentience of the alien overpowering Ben's consciousness. The big example of that is Ghost Freak, who grows stronger inside of the Omnitrix and can eventually take control of Ben while he's transformed. That's a gross oversimplification of like a giant storyline, but it's a whole thing. So, knowing that Ben has a hard out of hero time with that timeout feature is a nice security blanket. Inevitably, Ben will flash red and transform back into his normal state. And if the mutation process is basically like taking a real pill, naturally, that would also eventually wear off. Like when you have a headache in real life and you take a painkiller like Tylenol, the pill is dissolved in your stomach, absorbed, and then makes its way into your bloodstream. This is also why why these sorts of pills eventually wear off. Like, this is a very, very simplified explanation, but organs like the liver and kidney eventually clean it out of your bloodstream and out of your system. If the Omnitrix pill works anything like Earth medicine and is absorbed into the bloodstream, which eventually clears it out, all of a sudden, the Omnitrix's timeout features make a lot of sense. It serves as a heads up that Ben is out of time, that the Omnitrix pill is working its way out of his system, and that he's going to revert to his natural state. Now, that all sounds well and good, but, well, all of a sudden, this should become a big problem for Ben here because the Omnitrix also has something called the Master Control function. This is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. Unlocking the Master Control function means that Ben can transform into any alien he imagines with only a single thought. He has open access to all 1,900,000 and something catalog species, and as long as the power reserve isn't being exhausted faster than the Omnitrix can recharge itself, he can stay transformed for however long he wants. Yeah, this is basically like taking the training wheels off a bike. A bike that's faster than the speed of light. I'm still not over that. So Ben can now control when, what, and how long he transforms. Presumably he's sort of overridden the Omnitrix pills and is getting more into his system. Shouldn't that be a good thing? Well, it would be, except for one thing. The longer Ben is transformed, the worse that would be for him. And we know that thanks to a source that hits really close to home for me, trivia. See, back in the day, Cartoon Network would occasionally run marathons of their shows. During these, little bits of trivia would pop up on the screen, giving viewers a bit more insight into the shows and their universes. Ben 10 had a ton of these, but the one that I want to focus on here, one of the bits of trivia for Season 2, Episode 8 reads, "The Omnitrix's time limit is to prevent the alien DNA attaching permanently to its host." Yep, you heard that right. Permanently attaching to its host. That means that if Ben were one of these aliens long enough, he'd permanently transform into it. The Omnitrix pill wouldn't work its way out of his system, and his DNA wouldn't be able to turn back. So how then can he be turning back into Ben once he's unlocked the Master Control function, and his DNA is permanently changed? Well, when Ben is fully in control of his transformations, things look a little bit different. Before, when it wore off like a pill being sweated out of his system, the flash of the transformation was red. But now, after Ben is completely in control, when Ben goes default, the flash is bright green, basically identical to the light created by every other alien transformation we've seen throughout the franchise. What we're seeing here isn't a transformation wearing off, it's a completely different transformation. Ben is permanently an alien here, and an Omnitrix pill is mutating him back into a human. His DNA is being altered back from this alien transformation into the DNA of Ben Tennyson, which does check out with how the Omnitrix works. Basically, when a new alien touches the Omnitrix, that specific alien's DNA becomes the basis for any future transformations into that species. So Ben was just the human DNA sample taken by the Omnitrix. And just some extra proof here that Ben's body is the basis for the human DNA stored in the Omnitrix, well, there's a recurring villain in the series named Albedo. He was the assistant to the guy who originally created the Omnitrix, but he wanted the Omnitrix for himself. Albedo eventually tries to make an Omnitrix of his own, but when he puts it on, it reacts with the original Omnitrix that Ben has. It's like some weird version of their alien cloud storage got synced up and changed the setting on Albedo's Omnitrix. It suddenly thinks that its host is supposed to be human and transforms Albedo into an exact copy of Ben. Eventually, his alien DNA merges with Ben's, leaving Albedo permanently transformed, trapped in a body that is not his.
I am stuck in a sticky, sweaty, noisy, hungry, hairy, smelly teenage human body, constantly craving chili fries and scratching myself in places I suspect are inappropriate.
Wow, he really is you.
Ugh, shiver. Again, this is a kid's show. That's dark conceptually. And remember, this isn't just his appearance that's getting altered. This is happening on a DNA level, and the Omnitrix can change your personality. Albedo's consciousness is trapped in a snapshot of Ben's body, and this has a huge impact for him as a character. All of a sudden, he's forced to live with a teenage Ben's bad habits, intense food cravings, intelligence, or lack thereof. And eventually, Albedo's Omnitrix is broken, leaving him with no way to ever transform back. All of this just confirms that the Omnitrix's host will remain biologically mutated until the Omnitrix releases another pill to mutate the host again. So, okay, Ben's DNA is the human template that the Omnitrix is using. Ben is completely mutated into an alien and then mutated back into a human. Why does that matter? Well, I mean, just think this through. Sure, his original physiology was copied over into the Omnitrix, but his DNA, his molecules and cells, even his very personality, all of it was is irreversibly mutated. DNA is incredibly important to making a person who they are. Even though every human's DNA is 99.9% identical from one person to another, that 0.1% difference is enough that created billions of different people with unique personalities and experiences and traits. So imagine how completely different an alien's DNA must be, how different that must make Ben every single time he transforms. Ben Tennyson, as we knew him, more or less died in episode 1, the very moment the Omnitrix first triggered his transformation into Heat Blast. He's not turning back into Ben with every transformation, he's being remutated back into a human that was based on that original Ben, with the firmware of his brain updated to just love the Omnitrix. And the worst part? This might end up destroying Ben entirely in the long run. See, if you watch the whole run of the Ben 10 franchise, you'll notice that the producers did the smart thing and had Ben age with each new series, growing up with the audience who started watching the original show. And there's more than one episode where we meet future versions of Ben, so we know that he will continue to age into adulthood. So, as Ben ages, the Omnitrix is keeping up with him, and given the mechanics of how we know the Omnitrix works that we've laid out here today, that means that it's copying his DNA over and over and over as he ages, rescanning and updating its Ben sample with every recalibration. As the series goes on, Ben is transforming back into a copy of 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 his original body. And just like a JPEG being saved over and over and over again, eventually, the Ben we know may be completely unrecognizable, like a pixelated mess of an outdated meme. But hey, that's just a theory. A film theory. And cut. Up next on Film Theory. Wait, hold up. Did you hear that? Rewind it and play it again.
I'm down $2.4 billion since this new company moved in across the street.
This right here is proof that the Smiling Friends are committing charity fraud, so let's talk about it.